It was early morning in Austin, Texas. The sun was just beginning to rise over the skyline, casting long, gold-tinged shadows across the streets. Inside Iron Temple Gym, the air smelled of rubber mats, protein powder, and determination. It was the kind of place people came to chase limits, sculpt resilience, and sweat out their battles before the day began. Some regulars have been training there for years, others just weeks, but everyone respected the invisible code. Push hard, don't judge, and stay in your lane. Chuck Norris walked in quietly, dressed in gray sweatpants, a faded hoodie, and worn sneakers that looked like they had kicked through decades of discipline. Most didn't recognize him at first glance. At 85, his presence was more calm than loud, but it was still unmistakable once you looked twice. He signed in with a courteous nod to the receptionist, who blinked in surprise before whispering, "Is that?" to no one in particular. Chuck gave her a small smile and kept walking. He wasn't here to sign autographs or relive stories from old action films. He was here to stretch, lift, and maintain the body that had served him for nearly a century. As he moved toward the free weight section, he paused for a sip of water and surveyed the room. His trained eyes scanned quickly, absorbing form, posture, energy, tone. That's when he noticed it. A young black man, maybe mid-20s, was doing clean barbell curls with quiet focus. His form was excellent, his breathing controlled. But Chuck's attention wasn't drawn by the lifter's discipline. It was the three men standing behind him, loud in voice and low in character. They were all bulky, the kind of bulk that came with ego more than efficiency. One of them flexed in an exaggerated, cartoonish way, clearly mocking the young man's lifting posture. Another was smirking, making an offensive impression of the lifter's voice and chuckling under his breath. He probably learned that in some diversity workshop. The third one joked, elbowing his friend. Chuck narrowed his eyes. He moved to a nearby bench, pretending to stretch his shoulders, but he was listening. He'd seen this kind of behavior before, not in the movies, but in life. It was the behavior of men unsure of themselves, trying to gain power by belittling others. The young man continued lifting, trying to block them out. He adjusted his earbuds, stared forward, increased his reps. But Chuck saw it in the tightness of his shoulders, the shallow breaths, the flicker of embarrassment in his eyes every time someone else glanced over. The worst part wasn't even the mockery. It was that everyone else pretended not to see it. People nearby stared harder at their phones, turned up their music, suddenly found their water bottles extremely interesting. That silent approval always bothered Chuck more than the noise. The bullying escalated subtly. One of the men walked by and nudged the young man's water bottle with his shoe. It rolled under a bench. The group burst into giggles like teenage boys in a locker room. Chuck exhaled slowly through his nose, the way he used to before a sparring match. He stood up and walked over, each step measured and deliberate. He knelt down, picked up the water bottle, and brushed it off with the towel hanging around his neck. Wordlessly, he handed it to the young man, who looked up, first surprised, then wide-eyed with recognition. "You are you?" Chuck gave a slow nod. "You're doing great. Ignore noise." Then, Chuck turned and walked straight toward the three men, his face expressionless. They saw him coming and straightened a bit, like kids caught by a principal. One of them chuckled nervously. "Hey, it's Chuck Norris." "No way." Chuck didn't smile. He stopped directly in front of them, arms crossed loosely over his chest. "Mocking someone isn't strength," he said, his voice calm, but firm enough to cut through the ambient gym music. "It's cowardice, especially when it's 3 against 1. One of the men tried to laugh it off. "Come on, man. It's just some locker room jokes. We weren't serious." Chuck raised an eyebrow. "Are you proud of it?" They looked at each other. Proud of what? Of making another man feel small, so you can feel tall. The tallest of the three crossed his arms and puffed out his chest. "Look, man, we didn't touch him. We're just having fun. It's a free country." Chuck nodded. "It is. And in this free country, I'm free to call out your garbage. And free to show you what real strength looks like." The bully stepped forward slightly. Chuck didn't move. He didn't need to. His stillness had weight. It had history. "You've probably been lifting for a few years," Chuck said, glancing down at the man's shoes. "But you still haven't learned balance." The man blinked. "What?" Chuck pointed to the barbell rack. Lifting without humility is like a barbell with no plates. It's loud and empty. Now a few gym-goers had stopped what they were doing. The tension in the room had changed. The usual noise, the clanking, the grunting, the beat of trap music, faded under the gravity of what was happening. Chuck turned slightly and addressed the whole group, not just the bullies. There's a difference between teasing and targeting. One strengthens bonds. The other breaks people down. If you need to mock someone to feel powerful, you're not strong. You're lost. Silence. The bullies stood awkwardly, arms crossed, eyes darting. They didn't know whether to argue or back away. One took a step toward the lockers. Another shuffled behind him. Chuck didn't chase them or raise his voice. He simply said, "You've got a choice right now. Be better or keep being a sad echo of each other." The leader muttered something under his breath, but didn't respond. All three walked away, slower than they wanted to, faster than they would admit. Chuck watched them leave, then turned to the young man. "You okay?" The man nodded slowly. Yeah. I didn't think anyone would say something." "You don't need to fight alone," Chuck replied. "Sometimes, people just need permission to do the right thing." The gym was still quiet, but in a different way. People looked at each other differently. A woman near the squat rack gave the young man a thumbs up. An older man clapped once. Someone called out, "Damn right, Chuck." Chuck gave a small shrug, almost embarrassed by the attention. He picked up a kettlebell and began his warm-up set like nothing had happened. But something had. Chuck moved through his kettlebell swings with controlled breath and perfect form. His expression was neutral, but inside he remained alert. He could tell the bullies hadn't left the building. They were huddled near the locker area, throwing glances and muttering to each other. The young black man had resumed his workout, a little more relaxed now, but Chuck knew too well that bullying rarely disappeared in a single encounter. It often simmered, regrouped, and struck again when people weren't watching. As Chuck completed his set, a gym trainer walked over. Josh, a lean, mid-30s coach with a clipboard and a worried look. Mr. Norris," he said cautiously, "I just wanted to say thanks for what you did. I saw part of it, and, well, honestly, I wasn't sure how to handle it." Chuck looked up, offered a kind nod. "Don't thank me. Just don't ignore it next time." Josh rubbed the back of his neck, shame flickering across his face. "You're right." Chuck's eyes drifted back toward the locker hallway. The three bullies were still there, still lingering. "They're not done," he said quietly. Josh hesitated. "Should I ask them to leave?" Chuck stood, stretched his shoulders, and walked over to a padded mat in the corner. "Let me try something first." Back in the locker hallway, the ringleader, Brett, was still fuming. "Who the hell does he think he is?" he muttered. "Walking in here like a kung fu Santa Claus." His friend snorted. "Yeah, trying to make us look like villains." "Over what?" "A couple jokes." The third, quieter one looked uneasy. "I don't know, man, maybe we went too far." He didn't look like he was having fun. Brett scoffed. "He can lift weights, he can take a joke. And as for Chuck freaking Norris, guy's probably got one good kick left in him. I'm not scared." Josh came over, clipboard in hand. "Hey guys, management asks that we keep things respectful. If you're staying, keep it clean. That's all." Brett rolled his eyes. "Whatever." Just then, they heard a thud, a soft rhythm of movement. They turned to see Chuck Norris barefoot on a mat in the open area, flowing through a series of martial arts katas, graceful but deadly. His movements were fluid, precise, the kind that only comes with decades of mastery. He transitioned from a crane stance to a low sweep, then into a forward strike that cut the air with intention. The entire gym had begun to watch. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't showboating. It was a silent demonstration of power, earned, not bragged. Brett snorted. "What is this, a karate class?" But the third bully, Mike, was watching with his arms crossed, quiet now. "He's fast. For his age. For any age." Chuck finished the form and stood still, eyes closed, breathing even. Then he opened them and spoke. "I started martial arts when I was 18. Not to fight others. To fight myself." People around the gym stopped mid-set. Even the treadmills quieted. I was angry, weak, insecure. So I found ways to look strong. Hurt others. Prove something. His voice wasn't loud, but traveled. It had gravity. "You think power is about who you can laugh at? or who walks away when you bark. But real strength, it's control. It's silence when you want to shout. It's stepping in when others won't. Chuck turned, walking directly toward the three bullies now. Brett stood up straighter. "We're not scared of you." Chuck stopped 3 feet away. "You should be scared of what you'll become if you keep this up." Brett scoffed. "You want to teach us a lesson, old man?" Chuck raised an eyebrow. "You think a fight would fix this?" He stepped onto another mat. "Come, let's spar. 1 minute. No strikes. Just balance. I take you down. You leave that young man alone forever. You take me down, you win." Brett blinked. "You serious?" "I am." Jim's staff looked around nervously. One pulled out a phone. The crowd began a circle. This wasn't about violence. It was a duel of character now. A test. Brett took off his hoodie, stepped onto the mat. "Fine. But if I win, you admit you were wrong." Chuck nodded once. They bowed. The gym fell into complete silence. Brett lunged quickly, going for a tackle, assuming Chuck's age would slow him down. But Chuck pivoted smoothly, catching Brett's momentum and redirecting it with a hip toss that left him flat on the mat in 2 seconds. Gasps. A stunned silence. Brett grunted and got up. Lucky shot. Chuck raised an open palm. "Try again." This time, Brett came in slower, circling, trying to grab Chuck's arm. Chuck sidestepped, caught his wrist, and spun him into a shoulder lock. He didn't twist, just held, then gently released. "You're using muscle," Chuck said. "I'm using principle." Brett backed off, panting slightly, sweat starting to form. "I'm not done." "No, but maybe you're ready to listen." The third exchange came slower. Brett tried to fake a move left, then grabbed Chuck's back. For a moment, he had leverage, until Chuck shifted his center of gravity, hooked Brett's leg, and gently toppled him again, this time guiding him to the mat with unexpected care. Brett lay there, staring at the ceiling. Chuck offered a hand. "It's not about domination. It's about discipline." Brett hesitated. Then he took it. Chuck helped him up, looked him in the eye. "I didn't come here to embarrass you. I came here to remind you." The crowd around them began to applaud. Not a roar, more like a respectful wave of appreciation. People returned to their routines, but something had changed. Something deep. Brett stepped back, rubbing his neck. His cheeks were red, but not from anger anymore. His friends looked uncertain. The third one, Mike, nodded at Chuck. Yeah, I think we needed that." Brett muttered, "We'll leave him alone." Chuck looked at him. "Don't just leave him alone. Leave better." They walked off toward the lockers, quieter now. Not broken, but thinking, and maybe, just maybe, listening. Chuck returned to his corner. The young man approached him, towel around his neck. "Sir, I don't know what to say." Chuck offered a firm nod. "Say nothing. Just keep showing up." The young man hesitated. What you did, you didn't have to." "No, but I remember what it's like to wish someone would." He clapped the young man on the shoulder. "Now it's your turn. For someone else." They stood in silence for a moment, warriors from different generations united not by combat, but by clarity. Then Chuck returned to his workout, this time with half the gym sneaking glances, watching every rep like it was scripture. The air inside Iron Temple Gym was different the next morning. Not louder, not quieter, just clearer, like a fog had lifted. Word had traveled fast about what had happened with Chuck Norris the day before. Videos had circulated. Social media had exploded with headlines like, "Chuck Norris silences bullies with wisdom and hip toss." "Jim Bro tries to mock, ends up matched by a legend." But it wasn't just about viral moments. Something deeper had taken root. Gym goers who once kept their heads down now made eye contact, nodded at each other. There was a shared energy, muted at first but undeniable. Respect had become contagious. The young black man, his name was Isaiah, walked in that morning with a different posture. Shoulders back, eyes steady, earbuds out. He no longer needed to block out the noise. It wasn't there. As he sat up at his usual bench, several people approached, not to crowd him, but to acknowledge him. One man gave him a quick fist bump. A woman in her 50s offered a smile and a simple, "Glad you're here." Isaiah felt a knot in his chest begin to loosen. It had been there so long, he hadn't realized how tightly it had held him. Until yesterday, this gym had been just another place where he braced himself, carried armor invisible to others. But now it felt more like community. like he belonged. Across the room, Chuck Norris returned for his usual 7 a.m. slot. Still in gray, still modest, but with more nods and greetings than ever. He took them in with a polite smile, but as always, made no show of it. Josh, the trainer with the clipboard, met him at the mats. "Hey, Mr. Norris," he said, still careful, still a little in awe. "So we've been talking." Chuck looked up. "We, the staff, some members too. What you did yesterday, it showed us where we've been asleep. We want to make a change." Chuck wiped his hands with a towel. "Talk to me." Josh took a breath. "We're launching a new gym code of conduct. Not just posted rules, but a culture thing. Monthly check-ins, training for staff on intervention, an open-door complaint policy, anonymous if needed. And," Chuck raised an eyebrow, "we'd love for you to speak at the first member meeting. Not a show, just a talk. About strength. About how to handle this stuff." Chuck considered this. "I'll think about it. But this has to be about more than one moment." Josh nodded eagerly. "It will be." Later that day, Brett returned to the gym. He walked in alone. No swagger. No entourage. His hoodie was pulled low, and his steps were slow. He scanned the room, received a few stares, a couple sideways glances. No one mocked him, but no one greeted him either. Reputation, like muscle, takes time to build and seconds to tear down. He approached the counter and asked quietly, "Is Isaiah here?" The receptionist blinked. "You want to talk to him?" Brett nodded. "I owe him something." Isaiah was doing lap pull-downs when Brett approached. He saw him coming and stood, tense, ready, but unreadable. Brett paused a few feet away. "Hey, Isaiah waited. "I was a jerk. Not just yesterday. I've probably been a jerk to a dozen people. I thought it made me feel bigger." Isaiah said nothing. "I'm not asking for anything. Just saying I'm sorry. You didn't deserve it." A long silence stretched. Then Isaiah asked, "You trying to be seen doing this? Or actually doing it?" Brett hesitated. "I don't blame you for wondering. But no, I'm just trying to do something different." Isaiah gave a slow nod. "Start with leaving people alone who didn't do anything to you." "I will." "Good." Then, unexpectedly, Isaiah added, "And if you're serious, come spot me." Brett blinked. "You sure?" Isaiah nodded once. "I'm watching you." Brett cracked the faintest smile. "Fair." From across the room, Chuck watched silently. He didn't smile. He didn't applaud. He just returned to his stretches, satisfied. Not all change was loud. The best kind rarely was. Over the following weeks, the gym underwent more visible changes. Posters went up, not corporate slogans, but real words from members about inclusion, kindness, resilience. One read, "Strength isn't measured in pounds. It's measured in presence." Another, "Laugh with people, never at them." A third, in bolder type, "Respect is part of the workout." Chuck finally agreed to speak at the first open floor session. The room was packed, trainers, members, even a few from local media. He stood in front of them, simple as always. "I've broken bricks. I've sparred with world champions. I've fought on screen and off. But let me tell you something," he said. "The hardest thing I've ever done was look at who I used to be and choose to be better." He let the silence linger. Strength isn't domination. It's restraint. It's patience. It's choosing to lift others when it would be easier to step over them. He looked around the room. You don't need to be a fighter to defend someone. You don't need a black belt to be brave. You just need a moment and the decision not to waste it. He finished with no fanfare, no dramatic bow, just a nod, and then he returned to the mats. After that, the gym was never the same, and that was the point. Isaiah became a regular fixture, now approached by others for advice. Josh started a mentorship program for young lifters. Brett kept showing up, quieter now and more consistent. People saw it, respected it, and over time forgave it. As for Chuck, he never missed a day, never gave a speech twice, but he always watched. And whenever someone looked unsure, unsafe, or unseen, he found a way to remind them, with a word, a nod, or just presence. One morning, a teenager came in, nervous and new. He hesitated at the entrance, clutching a gym bag with stickers from his school's chess club and anime convention. A few muscleheads laughed, but then Isaiah walked over, stood beside him, and said, Need a tour? The teen nodded. Cool. I got you. Chuck saw it. Didn't intervene. Didn't need to. Respect had taken root. And once it grows in the right soil, it doesn't need constant watering. Just guardianship. Chuck picked up a medicine ball and smiled just barely. Mission accomplished.